Ruti Sachdeva Dean, she's joined in. Tanya Agarwal, Tanaya, Suchi, Savar, maybe Meghna, Gagandeep, Ekta. So, very good morning. Again, another happy Saturday morning, and welcome to those who are joining in. Vanshu, our Associate Dean, Manchester and Nadi. Gagandeep is joined in. Architect Rajiv Agarwal, very warm welcome. Yushtas, Rita. So, we begin or we wait a little bit more? So just a few slides to see the diversity of the work of Studio Code. I hope the presentation is visible. And our speakers today. So I think we're at 11:10. Let's begin. And the others can join in. So again, a very good morning, very good Saturday morning. And today we're going to be talking about integrated architecture fields, correlation and practice. So those of you, a lot of you, of course, familiar with Sushant School Architecture and the kind of programs that we have over here, the participants today. And I would like to, before I, of course, again mention a little bit more about the school in a few sentences, I would like to again welcome our speakers today, Rajiv, Vikas, and Amrita, and Mark Moda, who's co-discussant with me. And among the participants, of course, our faculty, our students, and professionals have joined in, and they're in particular, our Dean and Director, Dr. Vijay Sachdev, our Associate Dean, Himanshu Sangani, and the PG Program Head, Suji Modi. Welcome. So why this discussion? So we've actually come to the idea of this discussion of integration across the architecture fields because, essentially we as a 30-year-old school, Sushant School of Art and Architecture, has expanded its whole sort of basket of courses from the Bachelor's of Architecture that we've, been running over the last 30 years to master's programs in urban design, built heritage, interior architecture, and landscape architecture. So we've been constantly, in the business of pedagogy, we've been trying to see where, we can correlate, where we can integrate, where we can find connections and, work parallelly, and at the same time see what, where we are situated as a field in itself. So now, the idea was to take this whole discourse that we are trying to create in the pedagogical area into practice. And so today we have, these founder members, founder partners of Studio Code, which itself in its name talks about a collaborative design. So code is for collaborative design. So, who better to, bring this discourse on practice into this forum. So that's how we sort of envision this idea of looking at, what is the role of each of the programs, specializations, what is the role of, collaborations, correlations, integration across practice. So we have this very exciting platform today, and Vikas and Rajiv, all three of them will be talking, demonstrating this whole idea of correlation in practice through some of their projects. And it's extremely exciting to have them on board. And I would like to mention all three of them are alumni of Sushant. So it's great to see you here, and also from the same batch as me. So really heartwarming. So welcome you again. And now I will read out a little bit about Mark, who's going to be discussing with me. So Professor Mark Warner. He's, I think everybody here probably already knows him, but nevertheless, he's an architect from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, and he's been a gold medalist for best design pieces. And I think we all know him as Mark. We all know Mark as somebody who's been teaching, for so long, who's been doing some interesting, practice, and I think inspiring a lot of us. So he's currently a professor, design chair at Sushant School of Art and Architecture, and he's essentially looking at the entire design track. So what we all are doing in our pedagogical framework, basically. And so very interesting sort of perspectives that Mark always brings in and challenges the usual. And so I would like to hand it over to Mark to speak a few words, and then we'll go on further.
Thank you. Thank you, Parul. Well, welcome to this webinar. I think it's a very, very interesting one for me, especially because one of my, well, throughout my career, I have really been involved in so many different fields of design. And and I'm very, very, very happy to talk with panelists who also have a very diverse field of interests and exposure and experiences. So for me, this is going to be quite an educative session for me. So I'm really looking forward to it. So, Parul, I can't really looking forward to seeing the presentation right now.
All of them are also alumni of Sushant. So a little bit about each of them. Amrita Dasgupta is a practicing architect and visual designer who firmly believes in the transformative power of good design and its ability to transcend borders. She's an accredited LEED 2.1 professional. She has worked on published projects across various scales and typologies in the US and India. The projects span the fields of sustainable architecture, campus design, urban design, broadcast, and communication design. Amrita holds a master's degree in design and technology from the Parsons School of Design, New York City, USA, and has lived and worked in the US for 10 years. At Code, Amrita leads the brand identity and environmental design projects alongside ongoing architectural projects. She's also closely involved in academia at top national and international schools of architecture and design, having taught, juried, and lecture classes at the MIT, the Parsons School of Design, NYC, ISDI Mumbai, SPA, USAP, IIAD, and others. She's been teaching at Sushant in the graduate and undergraduate program since 2014. Amrita's academic film and installation works have been published in the Metropolis magazine and exhibited at the Rockefeller Center. She has written and illustrated a children's book also on architecture, From Pillars to Palaces, which was published by Pratham in 5 different languages. She's also conducted workshops with Bukaru, and she's an avid travel buff and a hugger of trees and dogs and loves cooking and the written word. So welcome, Amrita. Hi. Now, yeah, so of course, this is trying to compress, in a few words. Now, Rajiv Bhakat is a practicing architect and urbanist who has worked in the US and India on a variety of architecture and urban projects of various scales, including very large mixed-use urban complexes, office and residential towers and complexes, or hotels, small institutional projects, several office interiors, and many private restaurants. Rajiv pursued Master of Architecture from the Graduate School of Fine Arts, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, after completing architecture from SSAA. He's on the advisory board of SSAA and lectures and visits various colleges of design and architecture in India. Rajiv has taught, juried, and lectured at the undergraduate and graduate levels at the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia University, and the Parsons School of Design. His areas of academic study and interest include the cultural identity within and derived from cinema, and housing and lifestyle, controls and relationships. With a special interest in lifestyle patterns, Rajiv's work and interests merged successfully with several large-scale urban architecture projects, which dealt with the public-private field. Rajiv is also the co-creator of Paradiso, a graphic novel series about a post-apocalyptic world published by Image Comics. So, welcome, Rajiv. And now coming on to Vikas. Vikas is an architect and urban designer whose expertise includes both greenfield and brownfield projects with varied scale, context, and complexity. His significant urban design and master planning works include urban renewal and redevelopment schemes for old industrial townships, self-sustaining SEZs for major IT companies, institutional campuses, and a master plan for a new suburban town. He has been a team member for the preparation of an urban design strategy report for the Delhi Metro corridor along Aurobindo Marg for Delhi Urban Arts Beach. His architectural projects have focused on the design and execution of small to large-scale projects all over India. He has a special interest in buildings for science and likes researching on innovative methods of design and construction technology for housing. Vikas is presently the chairman at the Institute of Urban Design of India, Delhi NCR chapter. He has been academically associated with School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and Sushant School of Art and Architecture, Gurgaon, as a visiting faculty in the Architecture and Urban Design Department. He has juried and lectured at various institutions across India on subjects such as urban renewal, planning and design of new towns, local area plans, and urban infrastructure. He enjoys playing cricket and traveling at leisure. So a very warm welcome again to Vikas as well. So I think we'll now switch it over to hand it over to Rajiv to begin the presentation. So the structure of the event today is that we'll be starting with a presentation by Rajiv, Vikas, and Amrita, through which they will be discussing this idea of collaboration and integration, and of course demonstrating the achievements through a few of their projects, and then we'll go on to an open to a focused discussion across the 5 of us. And then we'll open the forum for question and answers. Also, you would probably be able to see that there is a chat box and there's a question and answer window. So you may type in your comments, your views or anything that you want to share with us, or questions in particular, either of these windows, and we'll be taking them towards the end of the session. So thank you again, everyone, and I would like to hand it over to Rajiv.
Thank you, Mark and Parul. Thank you for making us sound so lovely. I'm going to share content. Just give me one moment, please. I hope my screen is clear for everyone.
Yes.
So.
Yes, it is.
Yes, hi. So yes, we are Studio Code. That's our acronym for the Studio for Collaborative Design. We are a group of 3 friends, like Parul said, from the Sushant School of Art and Architecture. We were in the same batch, graduated many years ago. In fact, we met on the very first day of college and decided 10 years after graduating that we wanted to start our firm together. That's the 3 of us outside our office, right over there. I think we all look a little different from our college days, but we're still together and we're still friends. When we got together, we were very clear that we did not want to specialize in any one particular kind of architecture or one particular style or one particular kind of project. That is something many firms do. Instead, all of us have diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds, diverse educations from all over the world. And we wanted to bring that together to a single firm. So the objective of our firm and the way we work is that we take on many different kinds of projects. We work on this philosophy. This philosophy took a little bit of introspection on our part. We call it unmask, where we unmask the ordinary. And the objective here is that we're unmasking projects which are mass, which are ubiquitous. And we look at the word unmasked from 2 or 3 different points of view. We unmask, which means we study the volumes, we study the spaces and think about them differently, and also move away from the conventional and the ubiquitous in these projects. We work in a studio format. People who have worked in our office have often commented to us that they love the fact that we work in the charrette process and the studio process, which is very much like how architecture studios work in colleges. We discuss intensely and argue more as we design many projects. We have done and continue to do many different kinds of projects, which include everything from urban design to architecture design to interior design to identity design. We've designed websites. And in many of these projects, we actually correlate some of these works. We'll show that to you in some of our projects, which we're about to demonstrate. We also would like to show you how we think a little bit differently from conventional architecture projects, and how we hope to unmask. And we'll show you that in our projects. The first project which we're demonstrating is a project we call Townhouse for the Sun. The name was self-explanatory. This was completed in 2017. And this was an urban residence. It was a plotted house in South Delhi. And the moment we say that, and we talk about this, the images on your screen should reflect what we usually understand from houses of this type. There is this typology in Delhi particularly, which is called the stilted floor typology, where the ground floor is a stilted floor, and there are 4 floors above it. Many of these houses are built by builders. And this, in my opinion, is an understudied and underrepresented typology. We don't take this typology too seriously. But if you're a resident of Delhi, one realizes how common, ubiquitous this typology is. It is something of a important, complex urban issue in Delhi. And that's how we started to look at it, because it is so common to see this. And the challenge in front of us was, can we do this any better, while accepting the fact that the typology of the house has to have this tilt, it has to have a certain amount of floor area because of the needs of the residents, because of the needs and pressures on land. And normally, the shape and scale and size of these kinds of projects is determined by rather banal factors. It's determined by a rather banal set of laws. We all know this. If we've practiced in India, we know what laws are like. And these kinds of residences, specifically in South Delhi, tend to represent a rather banal idea of representing wealth. And we felt we could do so much better than that, because these houses have to represent who we are as a people. And when we started doing this, we go through many iterations, which I'll show you. That is an image of our office and our conference group talking to our clients. One of the beautiful things about doing residences, which is why they're such pleasurable projects, is that they are deeply personal. One has to understand the client's needs. One has to understand their life and lifestyle. I often tell clients that nobody is going to get closer to you than us. The only people who would get as close would be your personal doctors or your lawyers, because when we understand your residents, we understand everything about you. We understand your lifestyle, we understand your life for all practical purposes. And like many projects, we started having many discussions with the client in our conference room in our office. And this particular client kept showing a kind of discomfort. They were ill at ease with the project, and this kind of surprised us. This is not normal. And when we probed into this, and when we started talking to them again and again, what actually emerged is that several people in the sort of family whose house we were designing for were deeply claustrophobic. None of them actually used that word, but it just became so telling, and we understood that we had to design for this. This is part of who these people are, and we can't ignore the fact that this is an issue we have to deal with. And this simple idea led us to designing the house, and it led to some rather major design moves. And here is what plotted housing in Delhi normally looks like. We have this empty plot in the middle, and the bylaws tend to determine the plot sizes and the size of construction and the amount of construction that you can do. So a normal project would look like this. You'd infill between the 2 plots, and you try to max the amount of area that you can get. But because we had this unique condition with our clients, when they were so claustrophobic and they really wanted to feel an open space in a tight urban city condition where you're hemmed in between 2 plots, one of the decisions we took is that we were going to carve a courtyard out of the building and then have the building open up on 3 sides. What this does is gives us an urban condition which just doesn't exist in this row house typology, which is a 3 sides open space. And in order to do that, we broke no laws. We just studied the bylaws a little bit better. And this urban shape actually led to the plan which fitted very neatly into that particular condition and gave us these spaces. So here we sort of see the plan. I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but we have the drawing and dining. We have a stair which goes up and the bedrooms and so on and so forth. But the second part about this is that as we reach the top floors of the house, on the floors, we have this three sides open space. And on the top floor, we simply extended the Mumty out and created a double height volume on the top, which allowed us to. So these people who really wanted to see the sky, really wanted to see the greens, now got two parts of their design. One was the fact that we gave them a three sides open space on both the floors. And the second part is we created this huge double height volume, which becomes a skylight. And of course, this creates environmental problems. We actually had to study the direction of the sun. And in order to mitigate the amount of heat and sunlight into the building, we raised all the walls around the skylight. So we have this amazing condition, which we have now tested with temperature guns in their space, where we have beautiful natural light streaming in every day from the sun. And we don't have too much overheating and not too much architectural load with a simple architectural move when we did this. And here's the space. Again, we have broken no laws. All we have done is extended the Mumty out and given a skylight. And just at the top of the house, you can see the greens in the front and the double height space, which we achieved with these architectural moves. Here's the three-side open living room. This is where they spend a lot of their time inside the house. And you can see the amount of glass. We spent a lot of effort finding out the angles of the sun, the direction and orientation of the building to give them floor to ceiling glass because they had this particular sort of condition. As I said, this condition was so defining, and we really needed the sun to come into this house for the people to feel comfortable, which is why we call it the townhouse for the sun. The sun is everywhere. The second part of our inspiration is to look at residences from all over the world. And if we remember those images we showed about Delhi houses, they're so banal. And I call these houses as representations of various shades of white and beige, because they try to represent this cultural value of wealth. And instead, we are designing in a very hot city. And we looked at architects from all over the world, including India, who have designed with so much color, with so much brightness and joy. And we wanted to move away from the banal, and we did an enormous number of color studies in terms of what this house could be. And we decided that this house had to be color positive. We have to take these colors positively. So this gives you a sense of how we work in the office. Believe me, these are about 1/5 or 1/8 of the actual number of elevation studies that we did. We changed volumes, sizes, colors, materials, and we did so many color studies. I think the client in the end was a little flummoxed as to what they could go for. And I can tell you that I personally was pitching for the purple. I really wanted to convince the client that the purple house was exactly what they needed. But in the end, they chose a palette, which was the red and yellow palette. And even then, we went through multiple material studies on the outside. So we tested brick and terracotta and sandstone. We didn't just want to paint the house. We wanted that textural quality which these materials get, but fits within the volumes that we have. And those are the images of the house. And from the render, you can see exactly the residence that emerged. We finally used terracotta tiles with yellow color, and we had a proportion system which is reminiscent of the kind of architecture that we loved and we were inspired by to design in this house. There was an enormous amount of detailing which went in, and this is the internal stair. One of the interesting things about the stair here is that the wood, which is all over the staircase, is actually the leftover wood from the cutting of the chowkhats, the cutting of the frames. So in fact, we wasted as little wood as possible. The photograph doesn't really show it, but anybody who understands architecture detailing would catch the fact that all of the risers and the treads have a lot of wooden joinery. And the staining of the wood sort of hides that fact. There are lots of little details which we like to do. We are a very intense detailing firm. And one of the little details we developed for these clients was the fact that we created these round pillar-like structures in the staircase. It has now become a little bit of a studio code staple, where they can grip the round part and spin themselves around so you don't slip. It makes turning on the staircases just a little bit easier. Another interesting aspect of this house is that because we had these volumes which go from top to bottom, we studied the proportion of the house and we created a graphic based on it. And we wanted to integrate a little bit of art inside the house, which was designed by us. And you can see the proportion system on the left, and it was derived from the proportion system of the house itself. And from that, we designed a wall mural, which is in one of the inside courtyards of the house, which goes all the way from the basement to the absolute mumty on the top. So you see this mural on every single floor of the house. We also themed it in terms of colors. The major mural, as you see on the right of the screen, was also very bright, very, very color positive. There were paintings, I beg your pardon, there were prints which were designed for the lift, which was also built in glass because they were so claustrophobic. And the objective was that the art on the mural matched and correlated with the artwork which they see on the elevator on every floor. And as you go from bottom to top, you see a physical representation of the proportions of the house mixed with the colors and the artwork, which we found so vibrant. And there it is. There's the photograph of the mural as we executed it. It's exactly as we drew it. And I've highlighted in the left the fact that you can see this mural on every single floor. As you walk up and climb up to the floor, there is a window from every space in the house, from every central space, to see this thing. And it represents the proportion of the house from the outside. And then, of course, we used the same proportion and then made it into the handrail. So you see the handrail over here with the same cutouts all over the front, which is reflected in the front elevation. And like any residence, there is a lot of other detailing that then come out. You know, we have the library, we have the puja space, and they had requested us to make a contemporary puja space for them. And all they wanted in the space was the word Ram to be highlighted. So we designed a laser cut surface which is backlit, which you can see in this photograph, which floats at the highest level of the house, where you see this beautiful park in front of the house, and they come here to meditate, and it overlooks the park. And that's the sort of view we have here. The last two images of this section, which show the three-dimensionality of the space, where you can sit in a room and feel open on all three sides, right adjacent to the skylight, with the kind of sort of detailing that we did in the interiors. I'm switching scale here to an entirely different kind of project, from house to housing, which is a very, very large scale, very, very different typology. And we, as Studio Code, wanted to indulge in the luxury of doing a housing competition, which was a project in Ghaziabad. We were encouraged to do so by some colleagues and by some senior architects. And when we sort of read the conditions of the project, it was very strange, but all the project told us, all the brief told us, was that there was a very large plot, 8.68 acres, somewhere in Ghaziabad. And this is the plot size. And the brief stated that this was for a part of the city which was yet to be built. It was a very, very new place. So we had sent teams to sort of look at the site, and we realized there was nothing there. And the target FAR, which the project brief gave us, was extremely high. 3.75 is a very, very high FAR. And when we started to model for it, we went through many, many master studies on the site, sort of investigating various things. And we realized that it was very difficult to mask this huge amount of volume. These are very, very large FARs on this plot of land. And we came up with the sketch. This really is an original sketch designed for the project to sort of demonstrate the ideas that we had. And again, there were 2 or 3 core things we wanted to talk about. One of the problems of high-rise design, when you design very, very tall, 30, 40, 50-story buildings, is that you often cannot get those community spaces which one looks for in the landscape and the ground. So one of the decisions we took was to create these larger cores where 3 or 4 different floors would come and have a community space at every height of the building. So community spaces, rather than only being on the ground, translate across multiple floors and multiple blocks. The second decision was to use color and identity, because high-rise buildings tend to be a little anonymous. In a small low-rise building in a row house, a child can always point to their house and say, that's. But in a high-rise, it's very difficult for you to point to your house and say, that's my floor or that's my flat. So we wanted to use color to highlight identity across floors, also create a unique urban shape, unique urban identity. And of course, all of this relates to other things like fire laws and practicality and wind pressure, which this solution dealt with. And the idea was to create these large elevated community spaces of 3 or 4 floors, which sort of relates to the Jargula idea of having spaces from which mothers can look down and see their children play. All of these spaces, again, were meant to be color positive, to have unique identities. And as we start designing more and more of these spaces, the entire elevation of the building becomes a series of community spaces in various different colors. That is one of the building elevations. That's how we managed to mass it. And by doing this, we managed to reduce the amount of load on the community space on the ground, and at the same time, reduce the amount of building volume which we had to build. These kinds of projects have a great deal of detail. So of course, we have our usual plans and sections and elevations, and there's the project, and we had to design it in a way that there was nothing there. And we hoped that this would become a new housing typology in this area. That's what it is from the front, easily identifiable community spaces, vibrant, bright, and far more interesting than what one normally sees in terms of housing. Okay, handing over to Vikas.
Thank you, Rajiv. Just give me a moment. I'm just sharing the content. So this is the third project that we are talking about, and this is a master plan for Balarpur Industries, and this is a master plan for one of their first, industrial establishment, which is in Maharashtra. The project area is 114 acres. So we are again moving up a little larger in scale from that group housing project to a master plan project. And here what is important about this master plan is it was 2009 and 2010 when there was a lot of industrial shift which was happening due to technology, and Balarpur as a paper industry was also facing it. So they wanted to move towards a more technology driven paper machines. So they wanted to put expand their factory and keep the old heritage of the paper machines which were bought during the colonial era. The site, let me talk about the context quickly. The site is actually 2 hours from Nagpur, and it actually is at the fulcrum entry point after the forest area into the Balarpur city. Also at the same time, the yellow road that you see is the state highway. It was basically a road, but it was elevated to a state highway status because it was connecting 2 states, which was Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra now. Also, as I said, the factory expansion was happening towards the north, and here was the old colony of the factory, whereas they had another parcel of land onto the right side, which is this. So they wanted to move the residential area, by densification of housing towards that right parcel, and expand the factory to towards the north. Also, at the same time, it's very important that the city is towards the south, and the growth of the city is also happening towards the southern side. And these are basically industrial cores, by means of which any town or city starts. So they are the driving force behind any small town or an industrial town. You will see the railway corridor, and the railway station is right abutting the industrial hub, which fed directly into the factory. And then as you go towards the western side, you see River Vardha here, and the lay of the land is such that the whole site, from the new colony area, basically slopes down towards the River Vardha. So that's the broad context of how we started and why there was a need for doing this master plan. Moving forward, these are some of the views. So that's the image that you see on the top, which is the state highway. On one side there was Balarpur Industries, and on the other side there is a city, which was basically a low dense city with houses and commercial establishment which range from G+1 to G+2. Another image below which shows the entry to the service area, the mill entry. And this is very interesting, whenever you see any mill image, they always had these markers, whether it's a statue, whether it's a fountain. So, which was very interesting to see when we studied the whole mill complex. This is a view from, which is right from the top of the factory, looking towards the River Vardha beyond. That's the River Vardha on top. You can see that. And that's the industry right above it. On this side, you can see the city, and the city rises up the hill. So basically, the land moves from the hill to the factory to the River Vardha side. So that was the natural drainage system. The forest and the mill. That's the for. Then you will see the image, which is on the right, which is the Balarpur city. So there are all these avenues which lead into the city. That's the kind of a character of housing that exists. Very low rise, low density. Below there are two images, which is the Ganesh temple and Kala Kendra and the shopping complex. So these have a very vital role to play within the city, because these things are actually open to the city. So city can come into the industry and actually be part of the temple, be part of the Kala Kendra, or where there are Ganesh Utsav which happens, and they all congregate and celebrate it together. So they may become the larger part of the city in itself. Going further, that's the paper bill number 7, which was the new bill. The Thapar school, the nursery areas, and also they have been working for more than 60 years. These mills, and there is a pulp and there is a lot of wastage which happens when you produce paper. And built is the paper we all use in architecture colleges, and they are the biggest suppliers of paper all across the world. So that's but they also produce a waste, which is the sludge mountain image that you see on the right. The elevation of this huge sludge is approximately 23 meters, which have been built over so many years. And today they are trying to recycle it and also manufacture Balarpur Balarpur blocks, which are now being used in the construction industry. The housing typology, there are houses, and a mill, they have a very large hierarchy. There is a CEO, there is a unit head, there is a manager, there is a mid manager. Even in workers, they have skilled labor, they have unskilled labor. So they have very large range of hierarchies of people that work in the mills. So you can see even the houses will show you that hierarchy. Top left is the bungalow typology. A small house with a large garden, type C and D, the mid managers, G+1 housing, then there is G+3 housing on the other side of the East Colony. The workers' colony, you will see, very simple houses, single units, even toilet stacks, you can see them outside. But the workers' housing were really dilapidated conditions, and they really needed an overhaul. So when we looked at where we will be intervening in, so you can see that the blue line is the state highway. We took an edge along the state highway so that we can build a relationship with the new master plan which we were building for the new colony and through densification of the housing, which is on the right. So basically, the eastern part we had a little sliver, and the western side we had a larger area to work with. Also, we got the permission from the state highway authority to actually connect, and seam the two sides of the Balarpur industry. So there were two possibilities which are shown through, one here and one below that. So these were the two possibilities that we could explore as part of the master plan. Another constraint was there was a HT line which was running through the site, right through the center, which actually divided the colony area into two parts. The green that you see is the buffer marked by us, which is required along the HT line. The sludge mountain we marked because this area, we wanted to keep it separate. Maybe later on, once the whole sludge can be utilized for producing the Balarpur blocks, we can expand it later. So that's the area which was demarcated, which was not part of our master plan. Now, this was very interesting because as the industry was growing, the authority asked them to show social infrastructure parcels. So somebody in the authority and somebody from Balarpur Industries sat together without looking at the lay of the land, slopes of the site, just marked these blue parcels, as social infrastructure sites, just to show that these will be social infrastructure sites, and similarly green parcels. So now this became, a very big constraint for us because we can't intervene in this area. And the white area that you see as part of the master plan is actually the area where we could intervene. Can you imagine a site as amorphous as this? So it was something which also came to us as a shock and a very big. We accepted it as a challenge. Okay, let's start with it and let's understand, how we can work with these givens now. We started with our, regular analysis of topography, understanding the slopes, the maroon to yellow and the peach. So the darkest is the steeper slopes with the, a gradient of 12 to 50%, whereas the lighter yellow and the peach areas are, with gentle slopes. You can see that's a 3D model. That's the gray, which shows the sludge mountains. And also, the housing areas. So you can see that these were mostly the workers' housing, whereas this parcel was Gulmohar Park, which was in a much better condition. So, when we developed our concepts, we actually kept we conserved these as part of our master plan. Hydrology, the drainage pattern. So this actually helped us in identifying potential places for rainwater harvesting systems. So we marked all those possibilities, and the runoff can then again connect along the forest and can again go back to River Vardha. The final base plan, the yellow is what we had, as what we can look at as part of the master plan. However, we incorporated all these things and we thought, okay, let's start with our concepts and see how best we can incorporate these parcels. There was a design program given by the client. There are various hierarchies, as I said, but broadly, we were supposed to incorporate 1,200 families. So a density of approximately 6,500 people and 500 people, maybe floating population in the housing facilities and the public buildings, which were mainly offices like admin, IT training building, guest houses, estate office, social infrastructure like schools, hospitals, auditoriums, seniors club. Now, if you take, just a study, with respect to the program and the heights given by the client, which were mostly G+1 and G+2, and we put onto, the land area that we had, the yellow that you saw, this is what we were looking at. Okay, this is the program that we have, which we need to incorporate within this master plan, broadly to understand the volumetrics of the overall givens. So we started with a vision. Our vision was to create a new residential district at the new colony and an imageable urban front along the state highway for Balarpur Industries at Balarpur, this being their first plant. The key objectives to achieve the vision was that to develop a master plan which sets up a structure for future growth and change, densification and relocation of housing districts to new colony area, reinstate places. Now there were people were already living in the colony, and when we did urban design surveys and detailed understanding of the context, we realized there are these social places which people are really have associational values to, like where they celebrate Durga Puja, Ganesh Utsav, a Berry Park for children to play, which we thought we should also incorporate within our new master plan. Creating lively and high quality modern residential environment, relocation of public buildings along the state highway, recognize environmental constraints like sludge dumping area and the strike drainage pattern, and then suggest a phasing strategy for logical implementation process, because this master plan was we were doing this master plan for 20 years from now. The key design principles to look at were landscape markers, structured open spaces, public spaces, active shopping streets, congregational areas for people, places for children to play, interlinked green space typologies. Yes, some greens will be manicured, but these are very large estates of land. So the idea was also that we look at self-sustaining landscapes rather than spending a lot onto the landscape. The landscape should be in a way, should be self-sustaining. So we to choose trees and plantation typologies accordingly. Encourage pedestrian-friendly environment. This is a model of a compact city. Live, work, plays right here, and people walk here, people cycle here, people go to work, come back walking. So promote healthy environments, healthy walking streets.
So Vikas, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we'll have to keep a little track of time. So a little bit, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, sure. So we converted the site opportunities into constraints into opportunities, and re-looked at what are the possibilities we can look at. I'll talk about it as Parul's asking me to run. So the first design concept that we looked at was looking at the central, creation of a central community node, which is the blue, and then a crescent road around it with housing, basically around the community to plug in onto that. And then the Gulmohar Park was basically conserved, and that plugs onto the crescent road. The highway, what we did was all these arteries from the town which hit, the state highway. At that point, we kept landscape markers and opened it up so that when you're coming through a dense environment, suddenly when you reach to the state highway, you actually open up to a large open space. So that's like a relief, and then the buildings, like twin buildings, can be planned within these. This concept evolved, and that's the spatial configuration, putting the building volume towards it. And you can see that we have been very careful about, how to use these parcel of land, which were the constraints earlier. The second concept that we showed was building upon a linear plaza, a sunken court, which starts from here, and then you come along the shopping street, along the community areas, and towards the top of the hill, and then you basically branch out into the housing areas. That was the second concept. Based on that, the plan which we came out to was this. In this, you can see how the shopping areas, the community areas, the linear street ends up and then connects onto different quadrangle housing typologies which are here. The third iteration of the same concept was building on the lay of the land, using using land, self-sustaining ecological landscape, example, bioswales, shrubs, vegetations, and high efficiency land use to enable future expansion, high-rise housing. So using high-rise housing along the steep slopes to create a filigree wall. So, and also connecting the landscape elements which form the path and the road to connect all the housing areas. So housing area here, another quadrangle typology here. In this case, we actually save a lot of area for future expansion. So this, evolves like that. And in all the schemes, the community, is heavy in the center, and the central park is this Berry Park, which actually help, connect as a fulcrum point, connects to all the different typologies of housing. So that's the third iteration. This was the stage one. As we evolved it further, they really liked option one and option three. They picked up certain aspects and asked her to, incorporate these and move, and look at these into our next stage of work. That's the zoning plan. So we, again at stage two, looked at zoning of public buildings, different typology of housing. These were very steep slopes, so all fine grained housing typologies were incorporated here. Like the bungalow typology, whereas the quadrangle typology, the group housing typology were more located onto the larger areas, which were more lesser steeper in slope. Along this was where we placed all our public buildings. You can see that's a vehicular system. We developed different kinds of roads, different kinds of varieties of greens in terms of public green, cluster green, greens planted for buffer. All that is shown here. A contiguous pedestrian and a cycle network system which connects all the housing. That's how the public and community buildings along the movement line, along the state highway, so that it's accessible to all. At the fulcrum point of these integrated housings were the club areas, which form the major nodal point for all these housings. That's how we came to the concept master plan for that. After that, we went through two more stages, which I'm not showing you. I'm showing you now the final illustrative master plan, which and by this time we had actually worked out the codes, entry-exit systems, different kinds of courtyard spaces, open spaces, all the road sections, etc. Also, what we were able to do in those two stages was evolve these clusters further. At the same time, get a hospital, hospital building and a school building, which was connected to the city and opened up to the city. So as a service to for these large establishment and incorporate the city, these were the two very important buildings which were placed here, which actually city can use it. That's the 3D model photograph. We make usually a lot of models, and we work with thermocol models as part of the process, which helps us look at different ideas and iterations for urban form, and also look at courtyard spaces, the welcoming spaces inside. I'll be talking about a few of them here. So one was, as I said, that this is the entry to Balarpur. So we placed the landmark buildings at the entry. That's the road which hits Balarpur. So taller buildings framing the view as an entry space, to the Balarpur city. These are the connections to the city where it opens up, and there is a landscape marker here. There's a landscape marker here, similarly shown in plan. Twin building concepts, all access from an internal road from inside. As I was talking about the underpass, we worked out the radiants, and it came out like that. And when you enter into the colony area, this was the first thing that you will see. So we reduced, the mass here, created an enclosure through buildings, to give a sense of arrival into the colony. So that was the idea, to open up a large courtyard as you enter into the colony area. That's another, the photograph shows ABC typology. That's the bungalow typology, and that's the manager's typology, G+2. And that is basically the Berry Park, which is connected to all the three typologies. And that ends at, this area, which is the club, which is the node, which holds the overall ABC typology. That's the cluster E-type, similar idea of creating different kinds of group housing clusters, courtyard spaces, and the fulcrum point as Griha Kalyan Kendra. Another image showing interfaces between different kinds of housings. Pedestrian plazas were detailed out, pedestrian networks. You can see how they contiguously connect to all the kinds of housing. So that's how we detailed on the master plan. Of course, there's a lot to it. That just shows phasing. I'm just quickly running through. So red is what existing, and the white is what we propose. So there were n number of families. We calculated the number of families that we were living and how the construction will happen. The first to come, of course, was the landmark buildings at the two edges, and then ABC cluster. Uh, so you will see demolition and construction, which is happening through different phases, and these phases basically, amounts up to around 14 phases in total. And we worked out in detail how construction cost, etc., will also be worked out simultaneously with each of the phases. So that's the master plan. Moving on to the second project, really changing the scale now. This is
so sorry to again interrupt. I'm sure we would have all loved to go on and on, but because we'll have to probably rush through this because we're really getting out of time.
Sure.
Apologies. Yeah, but
I will. So this is Star Dental Interiors Office. We won the triple ID award for it last year. The idea of the client was to be rustic and frugal, and interpreted the idea. Our ideology was from their company's mission and vision, which was ethics and transparency. Ethics translated as sense of arrival, environment, honest materials, whereas transparency as open office, use of glass, connection to indoor and outdoor spaces. We used a process of layering. So this is the space. Again, a very, very amorphous space. It's bigger, it's smaller, it's bigger, it's smaller. That's a kind of a space. And then this is an 80-meter length of an office. So we created this as an experiential journey, as an armature with focal points as part of the armature. Then it maintained with, this was right at the Horse Cars Park greens. So building on the indoor and the outdoor relationships. So we wanted to keep the open office in the larger space. Functional zoning, public areas, here semi-public conference areas, and the workspaces in the private zone in the rear. So that's how the plan came to be. Entry, reception area, waiting space, conference room, utilities, an arcade. Coming inside, an object in space, 11 as you enter, open workstations, CEO and heads cabins in this area, and a dental health call center at the end. We incorporated sustainable practices and materials within this project, like use of jute, crate, and salvage wood, which have high recyclable values. We followed the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. All the new walls that were built, we didn't plaster them. However, it was very, very highly skilled labor which was used to build these walls, and reuse this wood to make furniture, reuse the salvage wood, to create the false ceiling, and the jute was a new idea that we came up with. And the idea was also based on the sustainable practices, and also recognizing of the Indian crafts, because this is a US based office which wanted an Indian office. So we were looking at ideas at how we can incorporate it, Indian crafts, and also build on an idea where we also empower the weavers community as part of a larger, larger vision to this project. So old age weaving tradition was again, reused in the project. Salvage wood, blacksmiths were used, which from the Himayanspur village, which is right next to the site. So you can see the crate wood as part of the armature, radial pattern and the checkered pattern through jute weaves right here to give different kinds of identity. And then after that, you can see all the services were incorporated in the center with balloon duct VRV system, which is much more sustainable than the regular water chilled plants. Flooring areas, create seamless floors along the whole circulation area. That's the carpet. Wooden floor selectively where we wanted acoustic treatments. The CEOs came in boardrooms, meeting rooms, etc. That's the image. That's just, how it looks like now. So that's the entry and the reception area with the seamless floor. You can see the crate wood on top, crate wood here. We even designed the furniture here. That's something, we use the cloves benches to give identity, because you can see, go to any clove dental clinic, you will find the yellow furniture there. So that's the first thing that you will recognize as clove. The lounge area, a breakout space where you had the view to the swimming pool down. So that is the lounge space. False ceiling, partitions. We going with the rustic ideology. We didn't use anything which was very shiny. So powder coated aluminium glass, smaller glass panels. That's object in space, the huddle room as you enter into the workspace. Some more images of the workspace. You can see the jute weave, the radial pattern, and how it merges with the crate wood, the seamless floor below it. Jute weave pattern for the restaurant, where we had a checkered pattern to give it a different character. We worked with the artisans and worked out a lot of details with them at site. That's the CEO came in. That's the 300-year-old cedar wood that we used for the table. It was designed by us. Furniture designed by us. A reception table. The boardroom table. That's the view. That's the simple view, and that's the final view. So thank you so much. I will hand it over to Amrita now.
I think you're on mute, Amrita.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to be talking about the projects we've done, which are identity and brand environment projects. How do I project it so that I can see all of you and be looking at this?
I don't think you'll be able to do that.
Okay.
So
All right.
either or. Yeah.
Yes, all right, sorry. Okay, so since we've talked about how we've tackled projects in architecture and urban design and interior offices, the sort of fourth broad vertical we work in is environmental graphics. Now, this is the Editor-G Media Office, which is in Sultanpur. It's run by Vikram Chandra, who you may know from NDTV. This is his news algorithm-based app. I won't get into the interior architecture of it because we've already covered what we do in those aspects. But I'll just tell you quickly about, sorry?
I think the PPT is invisible.
Oh, sorry. Just a second. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes, it's come on. Thanks.
So sorry, yeah. All right. So you guys can see the plan. So I'll just point out the fact that the office already had this existing space, which they had done in a very sort of functional manner. They had acquired this space and they wanted us to join them together and add a whole lot of more technology and service aspects to it. Because it's a media office, it has, of course, a lot of like regular workstations, which are media stations. It has a broadcasting booth, a voiceover booth. It has meeting rooms. It has a studio. It has conference rooms and admin sections, and a lot of spaces which are brainstorming, collaboration spaces. Now, our plan for this was, because they didn't have very much of a budget and we had very little time to work on this, because they have a 2 a.m., like they stop working at 2 a.m. and then they start working at 6 a.m. So literally all the work had to be done over 4 hours at night. So we looked at the idea of their logo, which is basically based on a neural network. A neural network is like a branching system which goes and feeds all sort of aspects of the body. So we looked at this as one whole body and how these blue pipes can be this overarching element which connects everything together. So here what we have highlighted, and I won't read them all out, these are all the spatial things that we have done, like adding a coffee bar, which was sort of a new entrance experience, adding a lot of collaboration spaces. The blue parts are all of the parts where we did a lot of brand identity work. We worked with the identity design team and a hand lettering person to create sets wherever we go. Basically, the entire office should be able to be used as a set. So they have a lot of like talk shows, etc., and everything can happen on set. Very quickly, this is the RCP and how we had to look at, we added close to 60 TV screens. So of course, electricals had to go to all of them, then go somewhere else where they're being looked at, all of the studios which are being used on the go. So we had this idea of these conduits. We made them in MS so that they would be fireproof because there's a lot of load being carried in them. These were sort of initial sketches we had done to make sure we fit in everything with their existing system in another building. So it was a lot of sort of technology integration. But the idea of these forming this network, which connects and binds the whole office, is what we wanted to explore. Some shots of the whole office. This is the entrance space. Again, all of these are all done by us. The reception table, which is the exact size and shape of the logo. So you can see these pipes are connecting lights down. They're connecting places on the conference table over here. They die into walls, which was another challenge because all of the wiring was within the wall. So we had to have this thing terminate within it. Briefly, I'll talk about the environmental design bits we did here because the architecture bits I touched on. So the algorithm which the app was based on is something we wanted to highlight. These are studies we did with the hand lettering team. Do we look at the ideas of it? But then the client was very specific that he wanted the algorithms represented somewhere. So we picked it up in chalkboards everywhere, like you can see in the pantry. So this is a shot from the entrance. This is the coffee bar, which is sort of the heart of the project. And this is where everybody can sit, they can have a meeting, they can grab a cup of coffee themselves, they can read a book. Vikram and Seema are extremely generous and everybody just comes here and they're just here all the time. Even their election campaign was actually lots of well-known people sitting here at the cafe being covered. We also have the shape of the networks changing at specific places to create these special areas. The other thing we wanted to show, this is the studio behind this wall. And needed to be sort of a dead surface. There's a double wall, there's a lot of acoustic treatment done within it. But the fact that we've been receiving news, either sort of like a phone call from a friend or on a tablet or on a device, and how we have been getting news literally has evolved from over the years. So we mocked up this idea of sort of technological evolution of news delivery, and then we drew it on the wall. So this is what it sort of looks like. You can see it's going all along the wall. So you can see that the whole pipeline is also running, and then you can see this as a backdrop. You can see the algorithms here in this one. Both of these are backdrops for many of the shows that they produce. We also looked at the idea of editor G as the fact that it's in many languages and the AI can help you sort of hear it or view it in any of our languages in India. So we wanted to explore the idea of G being this transforming element, which then sort of like works around. We did have to make it a little bit more formal, following the colors of the logo, which we felt made it a little bit more professional and not kitschy, which was not the intent. So these were painted just before the lockdown, so they haven't been installed. But the idea is that they're going to go, this was painted on before, they're going to go on all along this wall, so that when you are viewing it from this space, you get this whole plethora of Gs everywhere. I'll also talk about identity design, which is a sort of intangible thing that we do, in the sense that it does manifest into lots of tangible things, but it's sort of, most of its presence is intangible. Harappa education was started by Pramat Raj Sinha, the same person who was co-founder at ISB, Ashoka University, Vedanta. And now it's an online education university. So when we were tasked with coming up with the brand identity, a logo and identity system for them, we actually did this in collaboration with someone else who is an architect who works with us on some of these projects. So and also a Sushant alumni, Madhumita Nandi. So Studio Code and Madhumita worked on this project together, and because Harappa has this sort of immediately you think of the visuals of the plans and the cities and their amazing planning systems and their courtyards and their seals. So you have this idea already of what that means. So these are the keywords we put together to sort of frame what our identity would look like, which are also key philosophies of what the online education system was going to talk about. So advanced planning, efficient systems, highly developed, mass standardization, form function, attention to detail, communication and language. Now, let me go on to how this connects with Harappa. So the concept was that immediately when you see this logo, and all of them, as you will notice, are, how do I go back on this? I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to. So we wanted to talk about a symbol of excellence in planning, because that's what you think of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa as, like, way before their time. So the online education, the online university, and Harappa talks about sort of soft skills for office people, like people who are either starting off or mid-level managers, and how they can improve many of the aspects of their managerial skills. Also, the fact that they didn't have a virtual campus, we wanted to make this sort of H, which is made up of these two brackets, which is talking about a place to, so brackets is always two, right? So there's dialogue between the person who is giving the talk and the person who is receiving the talk. We wanted to have the double brackets talk about the physical and the digital world, because there is a physical world, but mostly the interaction is happening digitally. There are many courses, and these are based on modules, which again in Harappa, you found these bricks, which were modules, which were then sort of carried on further to make cities and towns. So the fact that you have a brick, which is an element of mass customization and a building block for further growth. We also like the idea that it's a palindrome. So you can literally flip it over on itself, and it becomes so it's about looking at it from different sides, and you can see similar things. And we wanted to also have it be a perfect square, because it's like a very, very balanced form. And the nesting brackets talk about the parallel knowledge within it. So this was the final logo that we came up with. The 3D part of it especially was very important to us to talk about how it's coming out towards you, especially because everything that you see on the digital screen is so flat. These are some shots from the brand manual that we had created for them, how it would go in white and black. And also I wanted to show you this because as architects, we have seen, assuming most people on listening to this are architects, but we do see the structured plans that we do as architects. We see blueprints, not blueprints anymore, but for urban design, for interior design, like we are familiar with the vocabulary of what we present to the client and what the finished product is. So I wanted to share a few slides of what we do as brand manuals, which is the finished product for the client, and then how that helps them define their brand going further. So when we design the logo and we design the visual language around it, we have to make sure it has legs, that in the sense that it can have the flexibility to become anything. It can become something on their website, if that's not something we have designed. It can become something in their office space. It can be something that they use in TED Talks. So it needs to be able to morph, but still retain its original character. So we looked at the construction of it, and because we're architects, we have to put a grid on everything. So we looked at how, if you look at it in a perfectly square grid, how does each member translate? We looked at the color palettes. This is after many color studies. We wanted to keep it fairly neutral. So you'll see the colors are mostly in shades of gray. We add the idea of a blueprint with the blues and then just some colors to make it pop. How does one read it, like construct it horizontally? How do you use it when you are using it on a folder and something else? And again, here you'll see that we can't help ourselves as architects, so we put sort of like a blueprint effect on it to highlight the construction of it and also recall the Harappan planning and the courtyards, how they would have sort of planned it. And then we looked at how you apply it to stationery, and we wanted it to be bold and also always almost be a negative, because we felt as a white standing out on something else, it feels stronger. We put it on mugs, which is something they give out. So two kind of designs of mugs. We put it on the uniform that they have when they have certain meets. We put it on business cards. It's black, but you can see the edges are this royal blue, which is referring to the ink of a seal sometimes. We did a PowerPoint template talking about how we can put in the logo, how we have these double nesting brackets as the edges of the templates. And then this is an example of how it has sort of transcended. So this is what they liked, how we defined it so much that this is now their prospectus for future students. This is what the website has started to look like. And this is their interior space, which was completely from our logo. So it has sort of a courtyard in the middle for meeting. The logo has become door handles because it has the versatility to be broken apart and used as elements so that when it closes, it still forms the same thing. So this is sort of like how we do the brand identity bit. If we're doing okay on time, I can very quickly rush you through the last tiny bit of identity design we did for Nandan Nilekani's latest brand.
So very quickly, I suppose. So we are running behind a little. Yeah. So thanks.
Yes, yeah. So we did the logo for them, and the logo basically was very, very clean and neat. And the idea was that we are raising the bar because they are a private venture capitalists, and they will work with you as a small business owner or whatever to raise your bar to get you to a higher level. So if you can see, the logo is called Raising the Bar. You are supported by a bar. The bar goes up. You see the progress. You see the progress, and then it is above you. So you have sort of ascended above. So there were many versions of the logo, and I've not got into it here. We did some sort of environmental signage for it. They're very happy with the logo, so we see them usually with it. The brand palette, the identity, the website, which you can see is responsive. So you can see it on your phone, on a tablet, or on your laptop screen. And yeah, that's literally it. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. So this is just a sort of, so sorry, this is a snapshot of maybe not all our projects, but some of the projects we worked on over the last 10 years of our firm's existence.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, the number of projects we could see were few, but of course, I mean, it would have been great if we could, go on and on. But I think the participants would have gotten an interesting kind of, the whole idea was to sort of open up the discussion and look at the various scales, look at the various dimensions and where things come together in terms of integration of the various disciplines and all. So I think fantastic. I think awesome it was. Thank you. And so there are some questions in the question and answer box already. But before we go there, I think I would like Mark to open a few questions that we can start with.
Yes, well, fundamentally, yes, one wonderful thing. Yeah. My first question is, how do I apply for a job in your office? Okay.
Please come join us, Mark. We'll be honored.
Yeah. You're actually walking distance from us.
Yeah, I mean, you have an amazing practice, and I think this is a very interesting talk for me. Yeah, okay, so we have some questions. we made a list of questions. But let me. How do you sum up your philosophy as collaborators?
As collaborators, how do we work with each other? Is what you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Two or three parts. I think the first part is when we came together many years ago.
Rajiv, you're frozen.
We gave statement A. We part was to resolve whatever design discussions and disputes we have through our lives. The second part of it is that we have a charrette process, which means that design issues, design problems go out to all of us, and we do discuss pretty much every design with each other. And the lead does take a final call on it, but we do that. But does that answer your question about our design philosophy?
Yeah, partly.
May I add to that? So I feel like sort of in continuation to what Rajiv said, we also we have this discussion all the time about how you can see certain architects' work and know it's their work. Like there's a certain style, like you know Zaha Hadid's work, you know Sangeri's work, because it all has a similar visual language. And we used to struggle with it initially. You know, should we have sort of a common thematic stylistic approach which binds our work together? But I think sort of our innate philosophy, which talks about the customization to do the project as per what the client sort of wants and what it needs to be. I mean, sometimes the client needs to be more than what the client thinks it needs to be. So I think we look at trying to see what the project wants to be, and that should not be bound particularly by a visual language. So I think our collaboration then is very effective because we bring different perspectives to it. So it's somehow, you know, we try to reach where it wants to go based on that, not sort of based on a common stylistic language necessarily, or an end goal we've got, oh, you know, it must sort of always look like that.
But also, every design problem is unique, and so is the solution. So we collaborate, in terms of design thinking, and whereas the solution to it is actually unique to any kind of a discipline or a given, context.
And so one more thing again is that sometimes, like, we will do a project where we feel like an external collaborator might be required to bring the project to a different sort of degree of detail, like Rio Care, which we did not. We had it's a big factory in Thane, Navi Mumbai, 40,000 square feet. And it has an extensive manufacturing, warehousing, laboratory, sort of R&D component. So we had a pharmaceutical collaborator, consultant to talk about that. Other projects we may bring on, we've got film consultants, like people who are filmmakers, people who are game designers, people who are sculptors. For this one project we did in Calcutta for a facade. So I think collaboration for us is within the three of us, and we work with external collaborators to sort of, get to what the project really needs.
Actually, I'm thinking, or are we on to the next question?
Well, yeah, anything to?
Yes. So I would like to add, ask this very, direct question, which is relevant for us, and I think young architects and aspirants, and that when we are looking at, specializations on one end, we are looking at these. Each of you have your own specializations, and they come together in some ways, and they contribute to what you do and how you do in whatever ways. And at the same time, there are these personal interests of yours, which, I read out in the profiles also. So how do you think, and where do you think, you situate these three aspects? One is your personal interests, one is your specialization, and one is what is happening in practice. So how does it come together? So basically the question comes to, where do these specializations contribute really? How? And would somebody rather think that let me just do practice and let me learn through practice, rather than specializing. So where is that kind of a situation, positionality of specializations and personal interests and the role of practice coming together?
So I think there's a presumption that we live in a world of specialists, and that is true to a degree. I'm not sure that's entirely true. That specialization is the only thing that we can do. The first part of that is that we went to a great college called the Sushant School of Art and Architecture, and it taught us that we can do many, many things in our design. Design is really not a closed environment. We do learn so much more. So I think that we managed to get our personal interests in because we're very open about it. It's not a closeted activity which we go home and do in the dark. We very much talk about our interests in office. We have discussed how to forward our own interests. We give each other time to sort of follow up on things we do, including teaching and including writing or sketching or drawing. I think I said that we made it a choice right at the beginning that we did not want to be a perfect specialist firm. There have been repeated projects over the years now, which I wouldn't say we're masters or experts on, but you do know about the project a fair bit. But I think it's a question of intent then, right? You must want to do different things. And if you want to do it, you will do it. And if you have two good partners to help you out with that, you will do it better.
Amrita, Vikas, any reflections on that?
Yeah. So I think specialization in itself really helps, but I think what binds all of us is actually design. So when we do design thinking, actually we can do design thinking on website. We can do design thinking on architecture, interiors, urban design, or any kind of a design subject, right? That's something which really binds us all together. Whereas once the design is done, like few of the websites we have discussed and shared it in our office, but we understand, okay, up to the design stage we can be part of it. Whereas the technically know-how about it, I think Amrita knows best. Similarly for any specialization, even urban design, with when you have a 2 years course, you also learn many other aspects of ecology, heritage. You learn about planning, execution, implementation. So there are all these supporting things that you learn as part of your curriculum, which the other person may not know about it. However, at back of your mind, you're pretty much aware of all of these foundation courses. So that really builds up the specialization. So yes, I think as part of the share it and the design thinking, we all can do that as one.
So my thoughts to add to the other two, I think Rajiv and Vikas have articulated most of what I would say as well. I guess a specialization gives you a different point of view. So for me personally, when I finished architecture, I was also always interested in art and communication design and exhibition design. So I thought that, okay, I'll get my master's in something so my master's is not an architectural degree, it's a design and technology degree. But while I was doing the degree, the architect hat would just not come off. So all of the sort of projects that I looked at were all spatially design oriented. And there was overlays of whatever I was learning there. So, and actually 60% of the people in my program were all architects, like their undergraduate degree was all architects. So, and then you find that people who with a maths degree, with something, a degree in computational science, they all have a different point of view. And I think a specialization, like Vikas said, trains you to do the job, of course, like the way it's supposed to be done, but a different perspective is really what helps you sort of give it a different edge beyond that.
Wow.
Great. So I think other one, anything from Mark?
Oh yeah. What is the future of collaboration and integration of architectural fields and other practices in this digitally connected world? We are going, what do you see the future of how collaborations will work out among ourselves and with other practices or other fields which will come up? Do you have any thoughts of what the future holds for us?
I think it's become so much easier. The lockdown has, suddenly taught us to deal with each other over long distances over so much better. And our worries over the first 10 days have completely been allayed now. In terms of collaborations, all it took was a few days, and collaborations have become sort of much easier to handle. We've worked out how to work out over the screen. And this ability to work over distance, whether the lockdown continues or not, will continue. This is a skill which we have hopefully learned, and we're still learning as we do this. So we're going to have little technology hiccups, obviously, here and there. And we hope bandwidth in India catches up with our needs. But collaboration is very possible, very easy. Again, I think the key word here is intent. If you intend to do it, if you want to do it, we find a way. And I think it's a great way to go forward.
I think in certain fields, sorry.
Go ahead,
I think in certain of our sort of like the 4 areas we talked about, it's easier to do it. Like if you're in identity design, for example, like our collaborators are across the country, and they have been for many of the projects. So that's sort of easier to work on because you're predominantly working in a digital space. But for our architectural projects, we have found it a little harder because the physical activity of marking up a drawing, which no doubtedly you can do in a PDF, and you can do it over a Zoom call or over Skype or whatever, and sort of show the areas on a shared screen, it is a little bit harder to communicate the full intent. So for that, I think, one has to work a little bit around it and be a bit smarter about it. So that's a little bit more difficult. But yes, I mean, I think if the intent is there, as Rajiv said, we make it work.
Yeah, I think it's also to do with the specificity of what we are doing. If you want to debate on a subject, if you want to discuss on a subject, I think long distance conversations are very, very good. If you want to maybe evolve a curriculum for a subject, you can debate it out. Sitting here with MIT, sitting here with Columbia. But I think as an architectural field working within the office, I think it's pretty different because, and there's something comes from experience, because as it was lockdown, we were also working in the initial stages, and we were finding really tough to work with our architects. The drawings which will come back to us even after explaining to, our architects, were not the same what we actually wanted. So we had to do it, multiple times. And also at the same time, I think the technology also have to evolve, because we all like to sketch. And till now, there are not many softwares which really help, in sketching so easily as we do it with the hand, or we draw it in AutoCAD. So it needs a bit of evolution, I feel.
Great. So I think lastly, any input, for us as an institution, with all these programs that we have across, also, I would also like to ask, what about where have you seen an intersection with heritage, and how, of course, you talked about some crafts coming into your projects, into the interiors and traditional techniques and all. But otherwise, is there any such intersection where you felt it was a challenge, when dealing with heritage? And then secondly, any particular input for pedagogy and for programs, how to prepare our students, for this kind of a collaborative environment in practice. I think these two things, yeah.
So challenges with heritage. We've definitely had work which is linked to heritage. We have not taken on heritage projects directly because that's not our experience. So we would collaborate with heritage experts if we were to take on projects like that. We have had projects which are adjacent to inspired from and connected to some fairly serious heritage. One of the ones which comes to mind is a housing project we're doing in Jaipur, which is sort of developed around a baradari, and what a challenge it was. And we really had to take some ethical decisions when it came to that, because that particular baradari is not listed, is not registered, and we went through endless discussions with the client as to whether we save it and how do we save it. And it was this one little baradari. And one of the funniest things about that particular project was it was dead center of a square site. So whatever we wanted to build, I mean, in simple design terms, it was in the way of everything. If we if we had to look at how the building was to be designed, but we worked around it. The architecture and proportions of the lower levels of the building was sort of designed to match it. Viewpoints were created around it, and actually the entire building, which is 20 floors tall, was designed around that one little baradari. That's how we would do it inside the office, that we be respectful to it, we think about it, we get inspired by it, and it is as much an ethical decision as it is a technological one. In terms of pedagogy, maybe we'll come to that as the second part of the question, but maybe Vikas and Amrita want to step in onto the sort of heritage part of the question.
Yeah, I think heritage is also part of the built environment, and we definitely look at it. The earlier master plan I did for built was in Yamunanagar, and the Yamunanagar master plan had a lot of buildings which were colonial architecture, bungalows, dispensaries, and even at the later part of the stage, it had Chandigarh style of housing, which we also conserved in that building. And at that time, those colonial buildings, we have reused it, by a method of adaptive reuse as, social infrastructure buildings as dispensaries and so we have been involved with that, but yes, we don't get into because we can do identification of conservation buildings, grade 1 or grade till grade 4 buildings, but we don't get to the upkeep or being the conservation architect. We don't take on the conservation architect's role. So definitely we will hire a conservation architect to do that, or collaborate with the conservation architect to do that.
Right. And about input, I mean, some feedback for the school and the PG programs on that end.
I think Sushant is doing wonderful, and we have been all involved. And something which is the local area plan that we have been working with urban design department. I think there is not a single school which has taken the local area plan to that level of collaboration. Collaborating with RWAs, with market associations, and we have reached to the level of now collaborating with local urban bodies. That kind of a collaboration, I don't think any other school in India has even taken it up. So I think Sushant is already doing well.
Can I say one or two quick things about the pedagogy part of your question?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So I was thinking about it as sort of others were answering. I think I would like to answer it from the point of view of sort of having a practice and having a fair number of really great, cool young people come from various colleges, including Sushant. And I think Sushant does very well on these counts, but I think it's worth sort of talking about it. There is a discourse for a long time about whether pedagogy should focus on sort of creative thinking in basics, or whether it should focus on having young people be ready to deal with the vagaries of practice. There is a practicing hardcore version of what this sort of work is. My point of view on that is that a lot of the construction aspects and the hardcore aspects of it, students come to our office and often say that they're learning it, and to my mind that's fine, they're learning it in the line of work. But what a practice finds very hard to teach you, no matter sort of how much experience you have, is how to think, how to design, how to think creatively. And I think students in college should be encouraged to learn about how to think. Yes, of course, there are the practical aspects of construction and detailing and design and all of those things. But we as a firm can help you with that, and that's what you're here to learn, and that's what you're here to do with us. But it's very hard to take a student who's done 5 years of work, who doesn't have fundamental thinking as part of their sort of way of working, but knows how to make a drawing in the snap of a finger. And I'm sure there are architects who will say the opposite, that they should come knowing how to make brilliant drawings. But from my part, I want to be a thinking architect. I'll teach you how to make a drawing. We know how to do that. Which is one part of what I had to say about that. Amrita, Vikas?
Yeah, I was going to say that actually, I mean, what Rajiv said, that so when we hire people, we look for potential people to live in our office, we're always asking them these questions, like design questions. And so some of them are quite flummoxed because they, they have not been asked those questions. Why is it this? Have you thought about this? Who is your favorite architect? What do you like about this? So we really do believe that you need to go to school to learn how to think, because you learn all of the practical stuff later. You need to know that, but you don't need to be an expert in it just yet. The other thing, which is sort of like, I think there's a question which Suruchi had written about, but which prompted this response, which is that, with machine learning, with how sort of robotics is coming in, and how people are sort of, robots will be able to do a lot of things. Machines will be able to do a lot of the things we can do, which are logic, sequential based things. So making a drawing, sort of following a process, filling in a BOQ, all of those things will be able to be done mechanically at some point. Maybe not to the best of their knowledge, but a computer can't think. So if a computer, so that is the creativity, the aspect of creativity and independent thought is not something that machine learning can take away. So I feel like if those are the thrusts of education and focus of education, then we're equipping our sort of children for a better future.
Right, great. So seems like, from all of this, that we are on the right track somewhere. A lot of focus on critical thinking that we try to bring in as a part of the pedagogy. And so there may be some gaps in terms of the skills that a person can fill, but the thought process and the curiosity and I think the very intensive kind of a processing of, thoughts which is required, I think is something that we try to focus on at the chance. So great. Thank you very much. So with this, I think I will now open it up to the questions that are already in the chat boxes, in the chat box, in the Q&A box. And Meghna has written 3 questions. So I think, Meghna, would you like to come in and ask these questions? I think you've been unmuted, other host. So I'll read out the questions, and if Meghna can join in, she probably will. So 3 questions. So I'll just quickly mention. She talks about what has been the most challenging and interesting project for Studio Code over the years. How has the pandemic affected the working of Studio Code and the ongoing projects, of course. So, and the third thing is, what do you see as the long-term implications of the pandemic on architecture practice in India? So, of course, very interesting questions. So, over to you guys.
So I think all.
Go ahead, please.
It's hard to say which is the most challenging and which is most interesting, because all our projects have inherent challenges, and the interest is what you make of it. No project is boring because it has its own specific requirements. It has its own specific challenges, whether it's the site, whether it's time frame, whether it's the condition, whether it's the budget, whether it's the client. It could be any of those things. The most fulfilling projects are typically where you have a good client, like a good client makes a good project, and your sort of interest in the project will also make it a good project, because then you bring your all to it. We try to bring our all to all our projects. So I think there are projects we remember because we are happy with the outcome, whatever the process was before. Some projects which we are very happy with the process, not so happy with the outcome. So I'm not sure if we can pick. I personally don't think I can pick any.
Yeah, I think most of the projects, all projects bring different challenges, and sometimes we we change those challenges into opportunities and take it forward. But I think it's very difficult to pick just one project which has been really challenging.
Oh, I'll give you one project. No, so I think we must have fun. But there are so many fun anecdotes after 10 years of practice. There are design challenges, and honestly, I think all three of us love them. That is the stuff we live for. That's why we do our work. Honestly, like those challenges are opportunities, and it is so thrilling to see some of them because you really have to think about what to do. But there are other challenges which are not necessarily design challenges. And one of the most interesting anecdotes I have for you is when we started one of our first residences many years back. We had all worked for about 10 years in other firms in other countries and come together, and we had a certain idea of what our role as an architect was and what we should be doing and how we should be designing. And we designed this house based on the client's needs, and we had a great relationship with the client. There was this one day the client walked in with what looked like a very complicated combination of a compass and a protractor, and sat in our little meeting room in our office, and then suddenly told us that they were going to measure, and I'm quoting here, measure through the compass how vastu correct our house was. And I think I remember sitting in the room having no idea how to deal with this one, because I think whatever number of years of architecture education and whatever number of years of experience I had, nobody had actually brought it down to millimeters for me. And once we realized that their sense of faith in this was so strong, the entire house for the rest of the project was completely designed around their desire to be vastu perfect to the last millimeter. And that really for me was a real challenge because I didn't know how to quite respond to those things and I couldn't question their faith beyond the point. But that one was fun. I remember that one.
Sure, thanks. So coming on to the pandemic and the effect of the pandemic on the site work and the way you're working in the studio and the long-term.
That was Mark's question. He also asked. I think you've already answered it. We can take the third one.
What was it? The pandemic question? Sorry, what was that, please?
So one was the question which said that how has it pandemic affected the working of the studio and ongoing projects? And the third one was, what do you see as the long-term implications of the pandemic on architecture practice in India?
Well, I think Vikas has rightly answered part of it. We had sort of a strange path through the pandemic and this lockdown. The first 2 weeks, we were full of energy and enthusiasm, and we were trying to maintain the momentum of our work. And as the lockdown appeared to continue into infinity, our momentum started to drop and our energy started to drop. And for about 1.5 months, we were not really productive, I think, or as productive as we should be. We were painfully drawing and sketching, but with no idea as to where things would go. As we started reaching the end of the lockdown, we started, everybody started hearing rumors that we would all come back online. And I can tell you that before we got our game going, our clients had contacted us. So they were calling us saying, how are you prepared for the lockdown? And I think Vikas, Amrita, and I, all three of us, were suddenly frantically working online for at least 2 weeks before the lockdown was completely sort of taken off. In terms of our construction sites, we have several going on right now. And it was a little bit of a task, but because our clients were talking to us 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the lockdown opened up completely, we were talking to our contractors. One of the things which we ensured, which was a little bit of a task, was that the entire period of the lockdown, especially for sites in Delhi, this was something we did. We made sure that our workers and our labor actually had food and supplies. Even those who were on site, we actually arranged for the food to be supplied to them. As a result of which, when our sites reopened and our labor who were staying on site, they were all there. Nobody had left town. Nobody had run away. And those who had to, we know the terrible, terrible circumstances under which they had to do so. And we can only thank the good Lord that we managed to make sure that our workers were okay. As a result of which, our sites started with a bang. They all started very quickly. And the first 2 or 3 days when the lockdown barely opened, I remember all I was doing was driving from site to site, making sure our workers were okay, that they were somehow disease free, and we had to sanitize our sites, clean them up, ensure that we had cleaning facilities back to back. We had to create protocols on site. And these are new protocols. We know about construction safety protocols, but we had to make sure that the workers started following sanitation protocols day and night. Literally cleaned, wash your hands several times a day, clean the floor several times a day. And once we had those things going, our sites are actually going at full swing.
Great. I think that particularly emphasizes this dimension of collaborating and taking care of, the people and the human sort of quotient that is required, I think, for any successful venture and practice, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So now I think Madhur would like to ask the question himself. Madhur?
Yeah. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's go ahead.
Hi, sir. Hi, ma'am. Hi, everyone. So firstly, I was really overwhelmed by all the projects that were shown today. And it really did made me think about a lot of things. So one of the questions that popped into my head was that how did you guys actually manage to come together and work after 10 years from passing out from the college, and how did you actually manage to land in your first few projects?
So again, that question there are anecdotes, there are stories behind all these things. We were actually living in two different countries. Amrita and I were living in New York at the time, and Vikas, I think, was working in Delhi, and all three of us were working in different firms. And oddly, Amrita and I both lived at that time, if I recall correctly, in Brooklyn, and not too far apart. I would say a 25-minute walk apart from each other's houses. From my perspective, I had worked for a certain number of years. In fact, by that time, 8 or 9 years. And it was very important, I think, to me personally, that I wanted to have my voice, my design voice heard in the project. And it was great to be a part of somebody else's visions. And I was working in a very large firm at the time. So, these firms, you tend to be one small cog in a giant wheel. And I wanted to have my sort of design voice heard. And when we started to talk, Amrita, Vikas, and I started to talk online, there was at least 1 year of preparation time while we were working still in our firms, where we discussed what we wanted to do. We made agendas, wrote to each other, wrote emails, and rather long emails, may I add. They were sort of letter form, pages and pages of what our ambitions in life were, and sort of started the conversation there. In terms of landing our first project, one sometimes has to have to we have to look at blind dumb luck, which is a wonderful thing if one has it on one side. I think there are very few architects who would like to sort of congratulate luck, but I will. The story behind that is that we were all canvassing for projects over this 1 year period. And, I had come to India for a short duration before I sort of returned. And I had met a few potential clients. I know Amrita was talking to people. I know Vikas was talking to people at the time. But it was blind dumb luck that my flight from the United States landed at 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't recall what exact time, and I had jet lag. So I landed, and I hope my parents were happy to see me. And I met them in the middle of the night, and could not sleep. I know because I was on US time, and around 8 in the morning or something like that, I finally started to feel sleepy. and I wanted to sleep. And I remember my father knocked on the door and said, "There seems to be a call for you, and somebody you met a few months back seems to want to talk to you." And I had given them my US number, which was decommissioned by this time. I was, they were only 12 hours too late. And so they called my home in India. And this gentleman at 8:30 in the morning said, "We just wanted to ask when you're coming back because we had this project we wanted you to look at. So when can you talk to us?" So by 10:30 in the morning, I had gone to visit them. And it was a fascinating conversation because they asked me, "Oh, when did you return from the States?" So I said, "Well, 6 hours back." And about a week later, we had signed our first contract, and we were in practice.
Great. Interesting. So I think that answers one question. Yeah.
Yes.
So now there's a couple of them. Of course, we are sort of running out of time, but maybe I'll just club them and ask all together. So one is from Professor Ekta Gyani, and so before that, I think architect Rajesh Agarwal. He asks how you all simulate your design ideas with the reality in the initial stage of design. So anything in particular you may want to add on that?
I think we did talk about design charrettes, and that's the way we work in our office. And once the project comes to our office, we introduce it to everyone, including all our architects, the three principals, and we say, okay, let's think about it and let's meet 2 days later. And we sit down on our tables with our ideas, sketches, and boards which are open to everybody. If somebody wants to try a digital version, somebody wants to sketch by hand, or any other version, making a model. So all that is welcome, and then that's how we start, with our initial process.
So I think also when we start, we do say, the sky is the limit. We don't sort of necessarily, we have the size of the site, we have the requirements, we have the structure for what we need to get to, but we don't try to limit ourselves at the beginning, which is sort of relating to the reality, I think, that's a part of that question. But then when we come to what is the big idea, because for all our projects, it's important to us to define what the big idea, what the big concept is, what are we trying to achieve through this design, and what is it doing for the project and saying. So once we get that, the nuts and bolts of how it translates into actual sort of drawings and things, and all of that is easy to work out, but you need to have that in place. So then you get bound by the logistics of bylaws, etc., etc. But you can make that work if you know what you are aiming towards.
Yeah, a vision.
Yeah.
All right. So quickly, I'll mention these two together. One is from Professor Ekta Gyani. She wants to ask particularly Vikas. So I'll read it out. So Vikas, how or not are you inspired by the paradigm shift to landscape urbanism as a worldview in urban design? So that's something she specifically wants to
I think it's pretty much recognized across the world now, and landscape architects and urban designers are working together as well. And you will see a lot of architects, landscape architects, doing public space design. You will see urban designers also doing public space design. So there is an overlap between the two. Landscape urbanism is very important aspect which will actually come in the future. Also, I think this is also a course which have been started in many universities now. Landscape urbanism is now recognized as a discipline. One of the Bangalore colleges, have been also talking to us, and they are working out the curriculum for that. And this will be a subject which will be launched soon as part of the college.
Yeah. So the last, I think, one question from Suruchi Modi, where she talks about where do you see yourself in the next 15 years. So I think giving it off at the future, I think would be a good idea. Yeah.
So I think part of what we are trying to do, apart from, of course, just do better projects, do a better job every time we do a project, is also find certain, I would say, there are certain kinds of projects. I think it's a two sort of pronged answer. One is there are certain kinds of projects we are more actively seeking, which we feel we would sort of, bring all of our collective experience to well. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. 1 second. Sorry, if one of you wants to jump in, I'll articulate the second part better.
Yeah, Rajiv.
Yeah, I think we had a long vision to go. We recently celebrated our 10 years just before, we were hit by Corona. And suddenly we are into these uncertain times. But definitely we wanted to, grow up in terms of the scale of the projects that we are doing right now. And also do much better, work in terms of, the kind of projects we take on. So be very selective about our projects, whether we take it, architectural projects or interior projects, where we are able to demonstrate our strengths in terms of design. That's something we are looking at, for the future.
Sorry, I remembered the second part. So for the last few years, we've been also trying to take on sort of self-initiated projects. This is sort of corollary to what Rajiv was saying in regards to the question. I think, like, how do you manage your personal sort of interests as well? So, if we are, for example, interested in exploring the townhouse typology, or interested in looking at how public spaces can be changed for good, how any sort of either urban condition or sort of public space condition, anything we find we want to explore further, we're trying to look for collaborators on that. So, for example, in Gurgaon, the Leisure Valley area, Sector 29, that whole park, we are in collaboration. We formed this thing called G Collective with a bunch of artists who are based in Gurgaon and across the world, the country actually. They're pretty well-known artists. And we have done the urban design framework for the park around specific installations that each of these artists are proposing throughout the park. So we looked at how we can organize them, how we can arrange the park, how we can add landscape elements to it. So apart from our artist collaborators, we have a horticulturist collaborator, we have someone for the costing. So this is something we are doing independently, and we hope to pitch it to the NCG. Similarly, there are other things in the works, and I think we hope that these and our code talks, which is also something we do in the office, which is about once a month, design professionals from any background come to our office, and it's a very informal over food and drink. I think some of you have been to it as well. And it could be a talk on anything ranging from urban design to a new game app on the internet, or to a film about the Commonwealth sculptures. So we try to sort of engage our thinking in different streams and then bring that back to our work. But we like to have them going in parallel.
So can I sort of So where do we see ourselves in 15 years? My answer is number one, still friends.
Wow.
Hopefully not having conversations only across screens, but hopefully in the same room at the same time. And I hope that we get to that as soon as possible, because there is a little energy to having all the three of us in the same room. There really is a vibe to that. There is something to be said for collaborative design, even in studios. When we teach, I find that students who work or even sometimes don't get along, this is something students don't get, I think, that even if they don't get along, sometimes magic happens. You do get fantastic designs from good collaborations and bad collaborations when you hate each other, but good design comes out of it. So, together, still friends in the same room, possibly focusing or looking at projects where we get to implement our big idea very well. Amrita said it really well, that we do look at that big party, that big idea. We ask the people in our office and ask ourselves constantly, what is your big idea? Do you have something to say in this design? So I think looking to work more on projects where we are able to work with the client, work with other people, and sort of investigate and demonstrate big ideas well. That to me is rather important. We get, all of us, all practicing architects get very muddled and bogged down by day-to-day problems of practice, and they are there. There's drawings and sites and people coming and going, and all of this is there. But this idea of being able to look at big ticket, big picture ideas and projects and demonstrate it, being able to investigate good design ideas, I think that's where we'd like to see ourselves, where I would like to see us in 15 years. And hopefully not looking too much older.
All right. So I think I can't see any more questions. I hope I haven't missed any. And I think that was fantastic. It was great to see, a glimpse, of course, of what all interesting stuff you've been doing. And I think you should consider inviting people online into code talks too.
That's a great idea.
We might do that. That's a good idea.
Yes. And I would like to hand over to Mark to, yes, Rajiv.
Invited.
Yes. So, Mark, last few words from your end to close the session. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So, very interesting. We had a very nice conversation about how you operate and what collaboration means from your end of it, which is very educative. Thanks for a very interesting talk, and the range of projects that you do is really wonderful, and the kind of things that you've gone into is very inspiring for us. So really, really thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much for having us and indulging us, actually, because we love to talk about our work and what we think, and it's very hard for us to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Parul, and thank you
for inviting us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Abhishek, let's take a group photograph like we typically do.
Sure.
Please, let's do that. Yeah, a screenshot, Abhishek. He's not picking up, so
let's see if I can.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can. Oh, maybe just a print screen, huh?
Yeah. So, smile.
I don't know if it happened. Can one of you also try?
Yes. All right. So thank you very much to our participants. It's been lovely, and let's hope to have build further from these conversations, and maybe even through code talks or otherwise through any ways, like you talked about, a lot of collaboration. So we're all there, and let's look forward to more collaborations, and as part of studios and as part of seemingly interesting things that we are also trying to do, and we are trying to constantly engage with a lot of stakeholders, particularly for UD, as Vikas already mentioned, but also in all other programs. We trying to reach out to the actual real world and think of how to find creative solutions. So great. Thank you everyone again, and would love to take this forward in whatever ways we can, and have a great Saturday and Sunday. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the SSA team.
So much.
And thank you, Abhishek, for all the support. Yeah.
Yes, and and thank you.
Thanks.